right, Matt, it's good to talk to you. I wanted to lead off with, it sure is chilly here in North Carolina. How is it for you in Denver?
Well, it has been quite cold the last couple of days. To add to that fun story is I had just finished doing some stuff in my basement and I had a pipe burst this weekend and I
Amazing.
have water all over the place down there. In fact, there are remediation guys downstairs right now cleaning up
Wonderful.
after that cold weekend.
Never a dull moment. You guys were sub-zero Fahrenheit, I believe, something like
Yeah,
that.
it was -12 last night when I went to bed.
NHL? Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to
Yeah,
stop complaining and we're maybe going to get some snow here or something, but not because you're up in the hills, right? You're kind of
yeah. I'm west of
northwest,
Denver, about
west, right?
45 minutes. My
Yeah,
mom's in Charleston, South Carolina, not too far from you. And I
yeah.
think she was joking that the weather, they said that they're having a potential winter precipitation event, which is code for snow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we don't really know what that is, so we got to kind of make up names. And yeah, it's probably 3 days off of school as soon as whatever
yeah,
happens down here. So
yeah.
um, good to catch up. Always great to talk to you. You joined Axcient in 2019. Of course, I was very much later, but I remember when I first joined, you really showed me the ropes and walked me through things, and we worked quite a bit together. So we're gonna chat about your Olympic history and, of course, your long time in the channel and how that how those learnings really translate between the two. But we would invite everyone. It's the MSP Experience Lounge. It's a very casual, laid back type of conversation. We've got some folks who know you well shouting
Yeah.
out. Isabel, good to hear from you, shouting out the silver medalist emoji. So wherever you're at, we get comments in from LinkedIn and from this platform, that platform,
Yeah.
from your account, from my account, all over the place. And we'll kind of aggregate things and make sure that we shout out to people. So tell us where you're hailing in from, what questions you have from the silver medalist, Matt, and RevOps genius, sales leader extraordinaire, and someone who knows partners really, really well and works every day to make their lives better through better solutions, better conversations, better training for your team to make the partner experience better. So yeah, please hit us up with
Yeah.
some questions. Denver based. All right, we got Isabella in sunny Florida. Way to rub it in. Every now and then they do get some bad weather, but in general, when pipes are bursting and you can go outside and enjoy some sun. So great for you, Isabella, down there near
Yes.
Tampa. But yeah, Matt, your background. Have you been in Denver? I know you do whitewater rafting, kind of like Southwest U.S. as well. So where'd you grow up? Where are you at these days?
Yeah, so I grew up for the most part. If you're local, you say Buena Vista. It should be Buena Vista, but Buena Vista, Colorado. So I'm about 2.5 hours from downtown Denver. Moved there as a kid after my dad retired from the Marine Corps, and that was sort of home until went off to college, and then bounced around the country a few different places, but always keep coming back to Colorado. And now I live in Evergreen, Colorado, at about 8,200 feet off above sea level. So
Awesome,
up in the hills.
nice. And that was Arkansas for college for you?
Yeah, I ended up going to the University of Arkansas because they had the best track and field program in the country. And so I had never been to Arkansas before on my recruiting trip. And so that's where I went. And they still have a fantastic program today.
That's awesome. And you got inducted into the Hall of Fame this last summer, I believe. Which
Yeah.
time frame?
So in October of this year, I was inducted into the University of Arkansas Sports Hall. It's called the Hall of Honor.
Oh, cool.
And there's only a few people inducted every year. I was the only track and field person inducted this year, but a lot of NFL guys and stuff like that. So I have what they call a brick in the stadium now, to sort of, I guess, I would have never guessed that I would get inducted, but I think it's a lot of context to the team I was on and the years that I was at Arkansas. It's a really good group of guys.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So let's just jump in a little bit to like the history. And so the Athens Olympics in 2000 was your silver medal run. Could you kind of walk us back from
Yeah.
that, to the training and track and field and how that led into that Olympic run for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So first off, it was 2004. So
Oh, great.
so yeah, so So I guess, I could sort of start with really the time at Arkansas. So I chose to go to Arkansas despite having a full ride anywhere in the country. Um, I had the highest jump in the United States my senior year of high school, but chose to go to Arkansas for 60% because they had the best program. Ended up having 5 Olympians in my training group. Um, my senior year of college, so in 1996, I was an alternate for the Atlanta Olympics, and then continued to compete. And I sort of felt like when I left college, I'd had I hadn't lived up to my potential, um, and basically it was after being a 5-time All-American, you still felt like a loser, which I had sort of a distorted view of the world. In 97, I competed and got a little bit hurt. And then sort of was like, I think I'm done competing. So at that point, the next year I got married, took a job. I always joke with new hires and say somebody lost a bet because I got hired to run a sales team in telecommunications. I'd never done sales. I'd never been a manager. It was totally new. So somebody lost a bet, but ended up jumping in and, so to speak, and working at a company called US West. What I didn't know at the time of being hired was US West had an Olympic development track and field team, which is hilarious. It was the only one in the country that had something like this. I had no idea. So I got this email that said, "Hey, would you like to do this corporate challenge?" I was like, "Sure." Hadn't trained, been playing basketball, working like 70 hours a week trying to learn this business. Turned the sales team around from one of the bottom groups out of 100 plus teams to top 25 within about a year. But started high jumping. Said, "Oh, this might be fun." Well, by my second meet, I tied my personal best, which was around the Olympic trials. And by my fourth meet, I broke the U.S. Indoor National Championship meet record, which I still hold today, 24 years later, almost 25 now. And everybody said, "What's going on?" I was like, "I don't know. Like, I eat McDonald's, I play basketball, I work like 70 hours a week." And ended up competing for US West and Adidas, or Nike at the time. And then I was able to go travel and do that. So I'm still working 70 hours a week doing all that. Ended up having a horrible Olympic trials in 2000. I think I finished 11th. And in our system, you have to finish in the top 3 on that day to make the team.
Oh, wow.
The next year, I destroyed my right ankle playing basketball. I had to sit out an entire year, and I never thought I'd actually would jump again. And then after that, I said, I'm gonna give it one more shot. My wife was like, "Well, I knew you were crazy when I married you, so why not? Let's give it a run." So I worked. I kept in the business world, so I was working full time. I ran a store for Verizon. I worked in a knock, actually, updating software for cell towers and things like that. The year of the Olympics, and then at the young age of almost 32, I finally made an Olympic team in 2000, and was not picked to do, frankly, anything at the games. And so I sort of chalked that up to my own stubbornness and pigheadedness. And those that have worked with me know that I'm a fairly stubborn and direct person. So that's sort of the history of sort of getting there. But I worked, I think that I worked at the least hours I worked was probably 50 hours a week while training myself. I was, mostly writing all my own training, doing my own lifting while working that full-time job, working splits if I needed to make that work. So it was not a glorious path, I would say.
Right. And we'll get to the glory on the podium in a second, but it reminds me, and I don't always have to bring everything back to marketing and everything back to Home Depot every live stream, but it's more likely than I will. But that commercial of Home Depot during the Olympics, where it's like, more Olympians work here than other places, or enterprise for college sports and things like that. It's sort of this idea that you had your day job, and of course you had your relationships and everything going on, plus this and everything extra. Feels not unlike MSPs and MSP owners. And so, So what's that discipline like to really schedule the day, to schedule your life, and just to give everything its amount of love and care to achieve all of your goals? You've had business success. At the same time, you've made the team and were able to go on to the Olympics and have a great finish. And then, of course, I know that you're still married. So checking the boxes
Yeah.
all across the board. How'd you keep all that up?
So I think this is, really relevant to sort of business experience and also for MSPs. And the part is like, look, you got to get really clear about what you're trying to get accomplished. I
Mhm.
have long said, and people on my team know this, is they hear, it's like your success is determined far more by what you learn to say no to than what you say yes to. Saying no helps you identify what is a priority and what is not. And so at that time, I pretty much said, there are three things I needed to do: pay the mortgage, stay married, and make an Olympic team. And you just didn't get any of my time. And I think that's really relevant for MSPs. Your business, our business, is to really help your customer. And anything that sort of distracts from that and takes away from those things, you got to evaluate. And I could give lots of what we'll call Mattisms, but it starts with sort of clarity. Like, you need to get really clear about what you're doing, and especially if you're going to compete on that scale, and if you're going to compete on that stage, it's really, really critical that you're clear, your team is clear, everybody's clear about what the mission is. Because if you don't have that, you're going to have mission creep, and you're
Mhm.
going to get distracted by the next bright, shiny object, or, ooh, there's this new piece of software, or, ooh, we could have a new office, or we could have, like, whatever it is. There are plenty of things to be distracted by, and you need to come back to that every single day and say, what is my mission, and does this fit into this mission? And we can talk about this other sort of statement. Is, as a high jumper, you look at this, and we talk about sort of jumping over the bar, and the phrase my dad gave me, it was, we were talking about this, is, look, if it's not motor, it's luggage. And I think that is really the critical piece, is, as a business owner, whatever, is whatever I'm doing and what I'm choosing to do today, is this moving me closer and faster towards the goal that I have, or is it holding me back?
Yeah.
Um, you got to let some luggage go if you're going to get there, because if you don't, somebody else will let go of their luggage, and they'll get there faster than you. And we all know in business, you got to get there quick, because if you're second, there's something there, but the real rewards are in first place.
Yeah. Hyper lean efficiency. Of course, this is not taking your kids and your family down to the lake or down to the beach for a
Yeah.
vacation or up in the mountains. This is competition. This is F1 style on the human level of the
Yeah.
highest bar is literally what you're trying to jump over. And so let's dive into that a little bit. Thanks, Kevin, for chiming in on the weather. Again, if you're chiming in, if you're tuning in, if you're here in the MSP Experience Lounge, kick your feet up. We love just to give you some kind of relaxing time in a really busy day to absorb some business lessons, things pertinent to MSPs in a fun, casual manner. So
Yeah.
sound off. Like, what do you want to hear from Matt? He's seen it all. He's balanced life and performance at the highest level. And he's been in the channel for years and years and years. He talks to partners every day as part of his current job, and really knows and sees your pain points at your level. And what do you want to hear from him? So we invite some questions. But this, if it's not motor, it's luggage. How does how severe did you get in your training, and how did that frame your focus from nutrition to exercise
Yeah.
to practice, and then on the flip side, how did you balance that with everything else going on?
So yeah, I mean, as a high jumper, it's a lean machine game. It's a power to weight ratio game, and so for me, like, I knew that. I mean, the bars we're jumping, just for some context, my personal best is 7, 9 3/4, which is just below a standard ceiling in a house. And so you got to figure out how to propel your body up over that. And so for every extra pound that you have, when you're going at the speeds that you go at takeoff, you're gonna add 14 pounds for every pound. That's what the
Mm.
conversion is about. And so this will make sense in a minute. Is I got myself down to like 3% body fat for
Jeez.
um, for that peak window at the Olympic Games. So, like, you could see every little muscle and sinew that I had. Now, that took me a long time to figure out to get there. I don't recommend it. It's not needed for people. Like, it's just sort of ridiculous. But you're doing ridiculous things at that point. And so, in order to do that in a healthy way, it impacts your sleep. I mean, I was doing intermittent fasting before intermittent fasting had been heard of. I was eating sort of paleo carnivore diet 20 some years ago, stuff that then I hadn't really read as much about it, but it was things that I thought about that was like, oh, well, this seems to be working, and I need to be lean. I would go to bed early, wake up early. I'm an early riser, and really customizing the stuff that worked for me. And I think there's a great lesson in business is, okay, so I can read all the theory and all the other stuff that everybody's supposed to do but what actually is working? That's how we need to measure success.
Yeah.
If this is working and I feel good and I'm able to execute and I'm able to do the task in front of me, then we should do more of that and less of the theory about what could or should work. Let's do what we know works.
Yeah.
So I got pretty serious about that. I would say that I was probably a very difficult person to be married to say the least. I think one of the years we'd finished the world championships, and I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, do you want to go to this meet with me?" And she was like, "You're kind of a pain in the rear end to be around when you're competing. So I'm going to go to Switzerland and try to find an old friend, and I'll see you in Monte Carlo at the last meet of the season. When it's all over." So. But yeah, so you just have to be really serious. You've got to be selfish about those things when you're trying to accomplish something that very few people get the opportunity to do.
Right.
And you're going to try to go beat all those guys. You better get serious, because there's no halfway in that world.
That's right. Yeah. I love the focus there. I love the sense of, and I've been finding this in a couple of things, in terms of fitness and also work. And, as we work in go-to-market functions and the sales marketing machine and, growing our impact with partners, you have best practices are there for a reason, and operational maturity is a lot of the language of the MSP kind of industry as a whole, and what you should do, and that's all great. But you're right. There's so many factors. Like there at your level, there's genetics and there's biomechanics. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. For an MSP, there's your geo, your exact mix, your stack, like exactly what your ICP is, what your value proposition is. That's probably different from your stock and standard MSP, or you more security folk. I mean, we could go on and on and on. So this idea of balancing, in a common sense way, the best practices that are out there, but really knowing what works for you. And it goes back to your idea of vision and focus. And so you had your goal and you had your target, and you were super clear on all the main priorities in your life, to pay the mortgage, to stay married, and to make the team. And so MSPs, this early in the year, it's still, I think, that sort of, New Year's resolution time, if you like that phrase, or 2025 planning time. It's maybe another reminder to folks to just take a second, get refocused. What are the must-haves for this year? What are the nice-to-haves? And that's all great, but what are the must-haves? Have that vision, have that clarity of mission and focus with the team. And then, yes, if it's best practices, that's great. If it's trial and error, if it's, just knowing what works and knowing what really is showing in the KPIs to get us to that goal, that's at the core, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to have that, that vision for where you're going to go. And, sort of the part we sort of talked about, sort of learning to say no, is that it's easy sometimes to get the temptation, like maybe I want to do more project-based work or whatever, or there's this, we could target this one other technology so we could move up market or something like that. And it's like, okay, that's okay. And there's risk with that. And you should take some of those risks. But at the same time, what does that detract from your current customer base and your current most efficient part of your business? Does it detract? And you've got to make those decisions and be really disciplined about the process. Yeah. Because if you're not, you'll find yourself 6 months down the line and go, gosh, we've wasted all this time. Morale stinks. People are frustrated, and your customers are not happy because you lost focus on what your primary focus should be at that time. And, I just encourage people, especially in small businesses, you've worked really hard to get to where you are. Don't be mesmerized by the shiny object. Mm-hmm. It's good to sort of to take the risk, but at the same time, know where your gifts and talents and where your strengths are. It's like me. I'm never going to be a gymnast. I'm a high jumper. I was built that way. So the business that you built, stick in your areas where you can do that, and then take the risks and build it out. But be focused.
Right. Let your strategy dictate the tools and the opportunities, rather than the other way around of like, oh, there's this new technology, or there's this new opportunity here. Let's go nuts for that. Kevin, thanks for writing in. He says, Matt, what brought you to Axcient? What about Axcient attracted you to the company? Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I actually had worked with a guy who's no longer here, and he had said, "Hey, look, we could really use some help at Axcient." Um, this was 2019, so there were some things that were really messy operationally, and um, I had spent most of my career really in sort of the sales world. I'd been VP of sales at 2 or 3 different companies, but I wanted to be doing some more operational work and rounding out some of that skill set. And I was like, okay, it seems like an interesting challenge. And so I was really excited about the opportunity to do some of that and sort of dig in. I think all of my previous bosses said I was sort of the sales guy that could speak geek. So I would go do all the operational work and try to figure out how to use data to help the team. And so like this just gave me sort of a segue into really maximizing some of that skill to really help the sales team, and identify better ways to go to market and better conversations to have, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and, obviously I've not overlapped with you for that full tenure, but just in my short time, just hearing the tales of how you transformed the SDR team for one, and working with them really closely with my marketing team, seeing how excellent that was. And then of course the revenue operations side was really pretty squeaky clean by the time I got here, and you didn't have to deal with the usual thing of walk into a situation of like, oh, where's the data? Where's everything? So that part was really well taken care of, and just all the evolution. We'll get to Isabella's comment in a second, but I'm sure that probably business development or some of the first sales hires for an MSP may be slightly different than the way that you transform the SDR team, but you work with sellers every day. You work with all kinds of functions.
Yeah.
What are some, and of course, as a solution provider, we're talking to partners and we're not always doing the sell through to the clients and to SMBs. And we know it's different, but you've done that in previous lives as well. What are some qualities people should be looking for? How do you think about how to hire right, how to train right, and how do you think about the sales function?
So there's a couple of things that sort of I would say is, and this is just a general principle. The core principle is hire character, train skill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if you can't trust people, and you just really can't move forward. You've got to be able to trust people and their character and the way they do things. I also would say you want to hire people with grit and tenacity. And so this is something that we look for. I've found a lot of success in hiring people that have sort of done sports at a higher level or ex-military, or, we're looking for somebody who's accomplished something over a long period of time, that has by necessity had some failures.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason for that is that I want people that I can coach and I can develop, and that when I give them feedback, they're not personally offended or they feel like that they're being attacked. People who are very receptive and they understand that I'm generally want the best for you. Really the other person should, so Isabel Oakley, she should actually be the one sort of asking some of these questions, but we answering some of these, but like we really look for people with that level of tenacity and grit and fight, and also who are just excited. I'm really, really specific and very driven, as you can mildly see sort of from my past and I want people that are driven like that. I want for people who are willing to say, you know what, I know it's hard. I sometimes tell them to say, look, everything you want in life is on the other side of hard. It's a great quote I heard from somebody this year. It's like, look, I want people that does not, that something that's tough that tunes them up and is really ready to do that. I also like people who take risks. We talk about that in hiring is, look, if I expect you to fail, and just telling people that even in the interview process, I expect you to make some mistakes. Almost any part of a business is survivable if you have somebody make a mistake. That doesn't mean that you don't train them. You definitely train them. We can get to that in a minute. But as a high jumper, the analogy I talk about is if the bar's not falling off, then you haven't set it high enough. Right. The only way that you get better is by taking some risks, calculated risks, and making some mistakes, because every time that bar falls off, you have an opportunity to learn something. Right. And that's how you innovate quickly, learn, push yourself, all those sorts of things. And so I think that's a really critical component for people that said, hey, I tried this, it didn't work. What did I learn from it? How did I change my approach? Those are talents, and those are things that I'm looking for when I'm hiring folks. So, and I would just say the other thing too is that I would encourage business owners never ever accept one interview hires. Mm-hmm. That is a huge mistake. And what I've hear from people is, well, they've got all the skills. I looked at their resume. I've done all this other stuff. and they go, I just don't have time. Like, look, you do not have time,
Right.
because one bad hire will cost you so much money and so much brain damage and so much repair with another customer. And that doesn't mean it has to be like a 3-hour interview, but you should make sure that you're looking to hire multiple people, or you're hiring over multiple sessions and
Multiple.
getting
Yes.
to talk to
Yep.
people.
Yep.
So that's a really critical component.
Yeah.
And I really should have started with this last piece, and then I'll just sort of finish there.
Yeah.
Is get to know the person first.
Hmm.
One of the things that I noticed and I think some of the reason we've had so much success with our SDR team is we got to know the person first before we actually did the interview about the business, because I want them to know my story. So our process is I tell them about my history and my, career history, personal life, all those sorts of things. So they get a sense of like who I am. And then we go through that, and everybody at the table does that. And we have our interviewee, they get to share their story. And what that does is it helps us sort of get to know that person. People quit their boss before they quit their manager. And
Right.
so we want people connected to us, because then we can have influence and help them. And they can see the world through our eyes a little bit better. And then we can get into sort of who they are and what does the job require. Interviews are tough. People are nervous. They're freaked out on both sides. So you kind of want to make that as relaxing as possible. You also tend to get the truth a lot more when you get to know somebody first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well said. People quit their bosses, their managers before they quit their companies. Right. People join. You could say
Yep.
companies. I think a lot of people join missions, or they join,
Mhm.
aspirational values, or an industry, but they leave managers, right, when they're
Right.
not set up. So really, Matt's back to what you said earlier. It's not about this blueprint or this thing on paper of this is the right way to do things, and so we all have to go do that. It's like what is working, what makes sense, and to get to know the
Mhm.
person, because um, it's true of your team. I'd say it's probably even more true of MSPs. It's got to be just incredibly challenging to, service your clients, constantly be raising the quality bar for yourself
Yep.
for quality of MSP services, to try to win more clients, to make sure that you can grow the business, to keep up with technology and everything's changing, and technology providers and solution providers and everything going on, and compliance issues, and then to go out and need to hire. And when you hire a lot for a lot of partners that we talk to, this is the year they get to hire their first salesperson, or their first marketing person, or their first dedicated, business development person. And that's a sample size of one. So when you get to do what you do by this point, Matt, and hire, cohorts of folks of 3 or 4 at a time, and then they get promoted later on, and you get to hire more, you get a massive sample size. You get to interview tons of people to, whittle it down to the right few. That's the best match. But some, it's a sample size of one. So at least do yourself a favor, if you're a partner out there, have the conversations, have them talk to multiple people, have the personal conversation. Like, that couldn't be more true. You said everything about all the waste, but time, was
Yep.
implied in there. But like, you're just wasting massive time with a bad hire. It would just, with the sample size of one, it's going to steer you in the wrong direction for a while,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. And to follow up on that, I think one of the other parts, that's really critical. And I approached sort of hiring as a much longer window process. There's the
Mm-hmm.
pre-hire and then there's the post-hire. And one of the big mistakes that I've seen over and over again, and I mean, and candidly, in some of the business I've worked on, I've probably interviewed 500 to 700 people for jobs. And so I probably made a lot of mistakes in the process. But as sort of you think about this as an athlete, I look at it and say, okay, so we compete on one day, but we spend hours and hours and hours and hours training and developing. Like, I had to teach myself how to run completely over again when I got to college because my technique was
Mm-hmm.
so bad.
Yeah.
And so when you make a new hire, even if their resume says they've done it or whatever, make sure that you're putting processes in place. I mean, James Clear talks about this and says, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fail to the level of our processes.
Right.
And so make sure that you build coaching and development in that over a long period of time. That's not an onboarding, a 2-week onboarding. That's 6 months. If you will make that investment and make it a priority, and my managers know this, like, you have to be developing your people, and you've got to help them take risks, help them learn, all those sorts of things. This is a much longer window, and if you will make that investment, you'll find out that so many other problems that you experience maybe with other people, they just begin to disappear. They just go away because you've got them trained to be successful in the way that you want. But I've seen too many people say, oh, I just don't have time for that. It's like, well, and then you're going to get the results that you
Right.
get.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It would be like, if you didn't have time for that third workout of the day that you had to do, if you just didn't have time for that, you wouldn't be able to achieve what you achieved.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Isabel, thanks for writing in. She's talking about communication and how big of a role that was for your training. You're balancing those three massive pillars of your life all at the same time. So, what's your learning from communication standpoint throughout your Olympic journey?
I have to say, in some ways, the greatest gift I got was actually being a river guide sort of before this, and this will make sense in a minute here. But being a river guide, you get to meet with lots of different people from all different walks of life. And being a trip leader, you're organizing, 60 different people for a half day trip and all, whatever is, you learn to communicate. You've got to be dynamic. You've got to be responsive to the type of people you're talking to. I was very fortunate in the sense that I did get to work with sort of a communications coach and stuff, is sort of actually that she was doing stuff with Peyton Manning at the time. Um, from a communication, you want to make sure that you've got two ears and one mouth. You've got some eyes. So you need to see what's going on. You need to hear what the people are saying, and you need to be able to communicate back your ideas and to make sure that you sort of understand it. And then make sure that people on the flip side, back in the beginning, is sort of this, you've got to make sure that you provide real clarity about what it is that we're trying to get done. And your team should be built full of people that can take all those things that in the way that you're going to communicate them, and you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to adapt to your team and to the environment, but learn how to communicate effectively. One of the, I think that the trick is, it's like in a leadership role, you want to make sure that like you're communicating in a way that's effective. And I talk to young managers about this. Is sort of like, you don't want to give instructions, especially to your team, that can be understood.
Hmm.
You want to give instructions that can't be misunderstood.
Right.
And I got that from my dad and his perspective, having been a POW in Vietnam and been to multiple wars all over, was you have to understand that when you're communicating to people, especially when people's lives are on the line or their livelihoods are on the line, you want to be clear in your communication so that your people can't understand it, because whenever we communicate, we load sort of our assumptions into that equation.
Right.
Make sure you're giving instructions to people that can't be misunderstood, especially on mission critical items.
Yeah. Amazing. And that congruence, across all aspects of life, of your mission, your goals, to communicate that, and just, again, everyone is synced into your vision. You can still be a difficult person on certain days when you're training and trying to get to 3% body fat and not eating and sleeping all week. Yeah, it's not going to be pleasant, but everyone knows why you're doing something and what the mission is, and it's not personal. That you're snippy or this, that, the other. But it's just the clarity that is reinforcing.
Well, and it's another, one of the other, I guess I have my dad to thank for so many things. Is, he'd say, it's awfully lonely at the top, but dang if it ain't crowded at the bottom. So, this, the perspective is, like, if we've got a mission and we're going to go do it, let's go do it, and let's do whatever we have to do to get there.
Yeah, incredible. I sort of glossed over the glory parts of the story because, of course, as you say many times, you're on that podium and the music was playing for only so long, and and you had the whole Olympic Village experience, and I'm not reducing it down to minutes, but you trained for years and 4-year segments and made this team and didn't make that team. I mean, the first part of your story just sounded like a complete roller coaster, and so just kind of give us the fun part of what was it like when the training and the focus and the communication all paid off.
I think there's a couple of moments that really stick out. I mean, getting to the Olympic Village was fun. Everybody always asks that question, like, was it crazy? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm sure it was in places, but you can go find craziness if you want it anywhere. It was fun. I remember walking into the stadium for the finals. And I was the last guy to make the final. And, I was one of the oldest guys in the competition. And I remember walking into the stadium in Athens, and sort of the significance of Athens in particular too, because this is the birthplace of the Olympics.
Right.
And I remember walking on and getting down on one knee and just sort of touching the track, because tracks are made of different substances and some are faster than others. And we're just touching it and going like, so this is the big show. And you've got this huge stadium and you say, it's time to go to war. as I remember telling myself that. And so, some of those moments, when you get there and, I made some really big risks at the games. I skipped a bar and came in, and I was in the gold medal spot till the very last jump of the competition.
Mhm.
And people were not expecting me to do anything. In fact, the press agent from USA Track and Field said, I walked off the stadium and she said, he said, Matt, that's awesome. We weren't expecting anything from you. And I was like, I guess, thanks. Um,
Great to
so, I
great to
mean,
know. Thanks for not telling me that
yeah,
before
yeah.
I was jumping.
Yeah, there's a few other moments that sort of stick out. My mom running down from the stadiums to give me a big hug. My dad had died just a couple months after the Olympic trials in 2000, unexpectedly. So that was a big moment. I talked a little bit about rafting. The guy who was one of my dad's best friends who started the company, him and another friend, literally the night before grabbed a flight and came over,
Oh, no way.
and came. If you know anybody that's a high jump nerd out there, Dick Fosbury, who invented the technique of jumping over backwards, he was in the stands and I'd known him, and he came running down in the stands and gave me a big hug. So that's like royalty. Like it'd be
Wow.
like you're like, oh my gosh, that
They
happened.
named a flop after you, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He passed away this last year, but we had been friends for a long
Right.
time. Um, but I think one of the moments, and I've been quoted a couple times on this, is the media a lot of times is always looking for that sort of gotcha moment and this story that they wanna get out there because it's controversial or whatever. And I remember somebody asking me, we're going through the press line, and they said, "Are you upset that like you lost the gold?" I just sort of thought about it for a second, and I didn't respond, right away, but pretty close soon after. And my perspective was, I said, you win a gold, you win a silver, and you win a bronze. And if you're upset about winning an Olympic medal, then you have problems.
Mhm.
And I think there's one of the things that's, I think, really unhealthy in our culture. Like, I always want to win. But I think at the same time, we need to have some perspective of that, like, there is more to life than like I have to be in the gold spot.
Right.
Like there's some of that. You have family, you have the people around you. What is it that if you get all that stuff, but you're a jerk? And so it's trying to have that context for things. But I just remember that and that stuck with me, is that you're more than what you do. It's what you do is not who you are. And I think
Mhm.
that's a really important lesson for us. And it's like we want to be great, as an MSPs. The MSPs are out there, they're trying to solve problems. You're grinding every day. It's not glorious. Um, you know, some days aren't glorious. Some days are awesome. You get the highs and low. It's the whole thing. But everybody just remembers the podium event.
Right.
They don't remember all the hard work it took to get there,
Right.
and all the pain and suffering and discipline and hardship. And you get to that moment, and then you're an overnight success. You're like, this wasn't really an overnight success. But just having perspective in those moments and remembering all the people that supported you along the way, from your first customer to your first hire,
Right.
your back office folks, that are running accounting or marketing or whatever, because it takes all of us. And it's not a individual sport at that level. There's a whole support team around us that help us get there. And when we get to that moment, enjoy it for what it is and don't be upset about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, we can always, pick some other standard or some
Yeah.
literally other bar to overcome. But for you, you'd achieved your goal, right? Against all the odds
Yeah.
for your age and for all the injuries that you had and everything going on, you absolutely achieved your goal with the support of your community and your family and everyone, and
Yeah.
that was a success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there were so many little things, and people that sort of came along the way. There was a coach that I worked with who was really helpful and gave me some insights here and there. But like, you're not an island. And you also have to appreciate the moment, because it's really, I forget that there was a book I was reading about it, and they were just talking about how people, like, once you get there, then it's like, okay, well then I got to do this. And it's like, okay,
Right.
pause for just a minute. There's always going to be a higher bar to jump,
Right.
but just enjoy the moment for what it is. And I think it's also really important, like I sort of alluded to, is praise and thank the people around you, because sometimes when you are maybe the star in that moment, you probably are pretty difficult. That's the general consensus from everybody I've talked to, is that when you're achieving at that level, you're kind of a pain in the rear end. So make sure you go back and thank the people, that that you work with. This year, I got to actually coach a high school kid who broke my high school record, who has going on to do other things, and just reminding him, like,
Right.
he's from a really small town. Thank the people around you. Thank your teachers. Thank your siblings. Thank your mom. Thank your dad. Those are really important things to sort of just have context. Don't read your own press too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, gratitude just completely flips that on its head of it's gold or nothing, or it's the best or
Yeah.
nothing, or it's,
Yeah.
we could always, envy is the thief of joy kind of thing. And so
Yeah, for sure.
gratitude is the opposite of that. So, as you look, back on the business roles and how hard you had to work at a day job, and then the training, and then balancing life and family and community and everything like that, how important is that for leaders in business areas, like especially in MSPs, to have that gratitude? Like how far does that go? Because I know that your team is super loyal to you and dedicated, and they feel that gratitude. They feel this, you're going to set a bar for them, and you're going to tell them, hey, I'm going to push you, and you're going to fail, but you're always there, to your point, to support, to get feedback, to make structures so that they can succeed. And you're always going to really shine a light on them when they do succeed. And you're very grateful to your folks when they achieve what they're meant to achieve.
Yes, I think one of the things that is just a very seductive process as you start to begin to experience success. And I would challenge anybody to think about it this way, in the sense that, like, make sure you surround yourself with a few people in your life, that can be business or personal, that are willing to tell you when you're wrong and not back down.
Mm-hmm.
Don't trust people who only think you're wonderful. And I think that's a really important thing, is that's how you can sort of live in a space that's really true. We talk about authenticity, and I think it's important too, on the other side of that is, and this is something we talk about in the interview process, is when you're working with your people, be authentic. And what I mean by that, in many regards, is be authentic about yourself, but be authentic about their performance.
Right.
I always tell the team, you're never going to wonder where you stand. I mean, I had a dad who was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, who did a lot of black ops work, so there was never any question mark. And so I think the thing is, the mistake that people make is that they try to play nice and be politically correct and not hurt somebody's feelings sometimes. But Bryce, if I told you you were doing wonderful and you knew you weren't doing wonderful, then now all I've done is I've showed myself to be a liar.
Right.
And I don't think people respect that. And so
Right.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you when you mess up. I'm going to tell you when you're awesome. And I'm going to thank you for it. At the same time, I'm going to expect more from you. And I think that people in businesses, I think especially frontline employees, and especially people that are starting in their career, they really value that authenticity, because they are tired of being told stuff that they know isn't true. And so tell people with love and kindness and caring about stuff, about what it takes to be great and what it takes to be better and all those sorts of things. But make sure you're telling the truth. Tell the truth always. Okay. Yeah. But do it in a way that's respectful and caring and kind. You can do all those things, and then you can help people get better. But when you lie to people, you completely dismantle any sort of leadership that you may have, because people know when you're lying to them.
Right. Right.
And that's true with clients too.
That's true with clients 100%. Too. That's right. Yeah. I mean, partners saying yes to clients with bad environments, or, kind of straying from their mission, because for legitimate reasons. I'm not trying to downplay it, but this fear of, like, well, if I don't win X amount of clients this year and I churn Y amount, then I'm sunk. Or, I mean, there's none of this is done without some kind of urgency, but still, it's, to your point, you don't have to chase the shiny objects. You can stay authentic, and you stay clear to your mission. You're fit. You know what works for your business. Stay true to it, hire well, and just be authentic. And if clients aren't for you, if they're more risk than reward, then they're not for you. And just have that confidence to be able to say that.
And you'll actually build trust. I mean, one of the things is, we talk about sort of, you don't have a product to sell till you have a problem to solve. And if you don't have the product that can solve that problem, it's better to walk. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just going to create a lot of pain for yourself and for somebody else. And I think trust is the beginning of all relationships.
Right.
And if you're a partner, the whole point of a partnership is that we trust each other. We should have some trust that's built. A good friend of mine, Corey Shear, he and I had coffee when I was in Kansas City it's been 15 years or so, and he just wrote a really interesting book on this. Um, and trust is the core.
Right.
And so you have to have trust in an organization and with your people in order for you to be successful.
And people trust you when they know that you can call a spade, right? Where like if something's out of whack, and if people just want to play nice because they don't want one more conflict or they don't want one more thing dragging them down, that's subconsciously kind of the cat's out of the bag at that point. It's like, okay, well, hang on, like they're not going to stand up for that, so things just kind of erode from there. So
yeah. Trust is a currency market, and once you break it, there's a lot of inflation that happens, and you don't get to earn it back at the same rate. And so, don't violate trust under any circumstances. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Own that.
Yep. Awesome. This has been such a great conversation. We'll start to wind it down a little bit, but anything else I didn't cover? I mean, it's always great to talk to you, and I had the benefit of being able to be in fun meetings with you and budget meetings and all kinds of other things as well. But it's always great to have your perspective, your drive, your authenticity. It always comes through, Matt. Anything we didn't get to?
There's one thing I was just going to say, and I would just, this is this really simple framework for business leaders to think about. And it's one that I've given talks on, and I talk about this, and I call this the CPR of a business. And we talked about the first part was clarity. Like, you need to get real clear on what you're trying to get done, whether that's revenues or product growth or hiring or all this stuff. So get clear. Okay. The P, we hear a lot about this in the world and influencer world, is passion. And the reality is passion isn't a good thing. We hear follow your passion stuff. I don't believe in that. I think passion is nice. It's a good initiating force, but persistence and perseverance, that's really what makes the difference. And business leaders, our partners, they understand this. Perseverance is what gets the job done. And so that's your CP, the CP, and then the R is results and review. So, you've got a goal and you've got a mission. One of the things we did in sport all the time, and as a high jumper, very simple, it's measured in meters, is look at your results, review them, see where you're getting better, see where you might be slipping. There's lots of trade-offs to be had, but really that clarity, passion versus persistence, and then results and review. That's one of the frameworks that I look at and I use every single day. Are we clear on what we're doing? Are we persevering through hard things? And what do the results say? And then how do we review that? So I just would encourage people to sort of look at the world through those kinds of lenses, and you'll find that I found great success in sort of looking at it that way.
Yeah, love it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've said before, a key to your training and your success was that you knew that you could outsuffer other people around you. Yeah. And when I hear a lot of this, clarity, fine, vision, strategy, that resonates with me more. That's it is difficult to do it really well, but it's like an aspirational, like fun thing to do. But then perseverance and results. With results comes accountability. Like when the results are not what you want them to be, both the perseverance and the results, and taking that hard look in MBRs and QBRs, that's painful. And so,
or it's a cause for celebration. So
right. Yeah, not always, sure, of course.
Get me more optimistic, Bryce.
Yeah, I know. This is the lounge. What am I doing? But what is it about the ability to suffer? But I guess more so, it doesn't have to be that dire. But the ability just to be accountable and to be up for conflict, for tough conversations, for accountability for results. How is that such a reinforcing thing that it actually is easier in the long run, as much as painful as it sounds? How is training your body to that level, having good regimen, having this authenticity, all these things that seem hard, how is that actually way easier in the long run in terms of, it just feels more congruent, as a lifestyle?
Yeah, I think, part of it is, what I said is everything you want is on the other side of hard. If it's, I was my college coach won 40 plus national titles. It was hard. Like, if you're going to do it, it's going to be hard. But I think that there's this, as you think about sort of maybe the outsuffering of people, is that what we don't get, and I don't think we hear it enough, is that when we go through the hard things, it really sort of codifies and solidifies this sort of core of like what it means. It's sort of like the hardness. It's true inside of you, and you know it. And I can recall, like I've said this to you, like you called me out on it. So like I could outsuffer you. And I just like, and candidly, I was not the best high jumper on my collegiate team. I was about the third or fourth on any given day. It was that stacked, but I could outsuffer pretty much anybody, I think. And so I think there is no shortcut to that. And I'll take you back to the Olympic Games. In the finals or in the prelims, I was right up there. I had 2 misses and I had to get over that bar. And there was something inside of me that said, and I remember going back there and saying this out loud. I said, I don't care what it takes. I don't care if I break my leg. I am going over this bar and I am going to the final. Okay. Mm-hmm. You cannot do that. And you can't dig that deep if you have not paid the price.
Right.
There is something about having done the work and worked through the process and endured the pain and knowing the suffering. There's something at the core inside of you that knows you can do that. And there's also something at the core of you when you know you've taken the shortcut, that you can't lie to yourself enough about that. Right. And so I think there's something to that. And so I think that there are so many great people out there that I've learned so much from a ton of folks that is the process, and love the process. So really critical. Did we lose Bryce?
I'm here. Can you? Okay, let's just switch places.
So
you blew us away. I mean, you gave us the gem of the whole stream, and it kicked me out. It's like Beyonce shutting down the Super Bowl that one time.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I was going to wrap up with this one last thing. Is like, this is one of the things that we tell the SDRs and we tell the sales is like, look, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a grind. You're going to make 80 phone calls and not talk to people. That's hard.
Yeah.
Right. But when you do that enough times, you get better and you learn and you ask questions and you do all those sorts of things. And so that's just like, there's something about going through the hard stuff. It doesn't always have to be hard. Some days are easy, but it's funny. The more work you do, the easier other things become.
Right.
So
right.
There's no shortcuts.
It's going to be hard no matter what. So just make your hard count, right? Because you could work really hard and you could kind of be exhausted, and then you could look back at those results and be like, what did I do? I just kind of ran around in circles and answered to every other person's last whim and kind of got unfocused and did this, that, the other. So if it's gonna be that difficult, make it count and have that focus, that clarity that we talked about earlier, to really make the results happen.
And it just also remember the other part of this, it's a process. Mm-hmm. I mean, I live up here in the sticks. It's hard to breathe. I go run when my knee's not bothering me. And sometimes I'm stuck in wind, and I've written about this in a few posts here and there, but like, you got to enjoy the process. Yeah. Like, running a business is like training. Some days are great days. Some days are really hard. You got to run the hills. You might some days feel like you're going to throw up, like you've just run hills. But you sort of say, okay, this is the process, and I'm just going to have to lean in to the hard things. Yep. And if you run from them, those problems only get bigger. You got to lean into the hard stuff.
Right. Absolutely love it. Matt, I feel a little bit weird with some of the quick fire lightning round questions. We got so deep on this conversation, and
super fun,
profound words. Oh, always fun talking to you. I know you have a couple of podcasts coming up. Do you want to plug anything? People can reach out to you on LinkedIn if they want to learn more or talk to you.
I don't have the other one scheduled, and I've just got to figure out where it is, but I'll post it maybe later. Cool. on the attachment. We're just trying to get that scheduled. I did do one that was really fun recently called The Worst Advice I Ever Got, which was super fun. And some of these same stories, these overlaps. But most of the other stuff I'm doing is, either motivational speaking or corporate events. I'm teaching. I still coach and teach. I'm teaching some in Colorado, the High School Coaches Association, and that's a way that I can give back to my community and people, the stuff I care about. But maybe I'll post it on the LinkedIn stuff or the new stuff as it comes out. But yeah, really fun to have these conversations, and thanks for having me. It's fun to sort of share. And if I ever write the book, it'll be my deliberate decision to be an accidental Olympian, because it's just such a bizarre,
that's great title.
Such a bizarre experience, but super fun.
Excellent. Matt, as always, a pleasure. Thanks for joining us in the lounge today. For everyone
Thanks.
else, please tune in next month. We do monthly live streams. We've got a roundtable tomorrow. Just check out Axcient Social. We've got all kinds of virtual events and great roundtables, great conversation with partners, all good stuff. So thanks again, Matt.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks
you.
so much. And people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on X. I never post, but occasionally I write some stuff. So
Very
anyway.
cool.
All
Awesome.
right, thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.